Welcome to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show, a real estate investment program. Listen and learn how to use real estate to build wealth and passive income streams for you and your family. We bring you experts every day to discuss and answer your questions on everything from single-family homes all the way up to 600-plus unit apartment complexes. And now, the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show.
Good afternoon and welcome to the show. This is Andy Webb with Lifestyles Unlimited. And as always, we're working on your financial freedom. So I know we've all had a pretty rough week across our great state of Texas this week. We definitely had our share of events here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where I sit. Power outages. Fortunately, we had our water throughout, our gas, which is important since we've got the gas-powered or gas-fired fireplace. So that helped a big deal, I'll tell you that. And I'm trying to bring on an investor with us today. I want to talk through his experience, his broader experience, not just focused on the weather and all the events we've seen around this storm today, but he's an investor that I've known for a number of years. In fact, I can remember meeting him, his name's Matthew and Jennifer, a long time ago, not too long after we joined Lifestyles Unlimited back in 2012. And, I had the pleasure of watching him progress. I mean, he was always ahead of me, right? He's kind of one of those guys, if you've heard me talk on any of the prior shows, that I treat as a benchmark. Somebody that's always a little bit ahead of me, or a lot of bit ahead of me in this case, that I want to try to run and catch up to. And I've just watched him progress through the real estate world from single family investor to now lead investor in a couple of multifamily properties. In fact, he and Jennifer were the 2018 winners of the Independent Rental Owner of the Year, awarded by the National Apartment Association. That's in their case for 250 units or less. There's another one for more than 250 and so on. But they were the 2018 winners of that IRO, that Independent Rental Owner of the Year for the whole country, right? We see a lot of winners coming through the doors at Lifestyles Unlimited. And like I said, I've been following Matthew and Jennifer for years, and I can tell you this, when he talks, I listen. Okay. And my producer's trying to get him on here. He's a little bit north of me here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I know, much like myself, he's been dealing with some issues, water outages, electric, and so on. So we did chat a little bit ago. So we'll see if we can get him on and get his background story so you hear the full picture, hear a little bit about what he's been dealing with as a result of this weather. And I also want to have him talk a little bit about getting involved, because he's very much involved at the local level, politically, in a number of organizations with the National Apartment Association and so on. So I find that it's always helpful, especially in times like these, to have that network. That network of people around you that can help you when you run into difficulties, whether it's this extreme weather event. And it's pretty extreme. I was listening to the ERCOT guys. I know we have very few fans of ERCOT, which is our Electricity Reliability Council of Texas. Very few fans in the state right now. They seem to have dropped the ball and lost our grid essentially for a period of time. But it may be the loss of the grid, it may be that extreme weather, it may be a fire, but it's always good to have that support around you. And again, whether it's on a personal level or with your real estate investing. I did a show earlier today, and that one will be archived out on our website. If you go to lifestylesunlimited.com, click on the radio tab, talked about dealing with these sort of situations. Again, this, I know ERCOT was planning for the majority of events, 95%. Right, they talked about the bell curve in that interview I saw, and 95% of the weather events fell within the planning they had done. Well, we just saw a 5% tail event out on the extreme end, which pushed us to the brink essentially. But you can find that show. Let me just take a step back. If you go to lifestylesunlimited.com, click on the radio tab. I talked through a number of things that I think are important for you, the real estate investor, namely, not just reacting, but unlike ERCOT, actually planning and being prepared for these sort of events, having a plan, what you do in the middle of that event and what you do after that event. All right. Well, Matthew, I've been talking a little bit. I talked to you up a bit already. I don't know if you caught any of that over the airwaves, but I just introduced you as somebody that I've known for quite a while. Thanks to the Lifestyles Unlimited organization, I've watched you and Jennifer, develop and evolve over the years. I mentioned your 2018 award at the IRO, and I want to welcome you to the show. I guess we had some difficulties. How are things looking in your neck of the woods?
Well, all of our residents have water again, so everybody's got water except for us at our house. But we're making progress on it, and we've got power. So things have come along, and I think probably the biggest lesson from this, and we had planned ahead, is that we had all of the parts that we needed to deal with a major disaster like this already on hand and ready to go. So when the shelves became empty at the local hardware stores, we still had everything we need, and so we were able to get our last 100 residents back up online yesterday.
Wow. That's amazing. And I remember you and I were chatting a little bit ahead of the show. I remember seeing you out and about town one time, just ran into you on the street somewhere in this big yellow box truck, which apparently you had stocked appropriately for this particular event. That's good to hear.
Just barely. We used almost everything we had on the truck, and when we bought it, just to be safe, we thought there's no way we'll ever need this. Well, we needed almost every single coupling.
Wow. But you got everybody up and running.
Yeah, and I think the biggest lesson from this, and staff really pulled through and did a great job of trying to stay in communication with the residents to make sure that they knew, hey, there's only so much we can do, but we're ready, and we want to get out there and help. And just constant communication, whether it was through texts, mass texts, or returning the phone calls, has been really key to not having this be even worse than it could have been. We were giving them advice on what to do with their water systems while we were trying to get everything back online, and that made a huge difference in how fast we could do it.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to head into a break. I know you've just been with us a short couple minutes here, but when we come back, I want to hear a little bit more about the planning phase. And I want to get to your background because I think that's extremely important for people to see kind of the evolution of the natural progression, let's say, of the real estate investor, because you guys have come a long way since I first met you. And like I said, I've enjoyed watching the development. I want everyone else to hear about that, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. It's time to turn up the volume and fine-tune your passive income plan so you can create the lifestyle you've always wanted.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Andy Webb, and I'm joined today by a great guest here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area where I also sit. I'm joined by Matthew, 2018 winner of the Independent Rental of the Year Award from the National Apartment Association, and somebody that I've been following since I joined Lifestyles Unlimited, watching his progression. He was a single-family investor when I joined. I can remember the road trip, Matthew, that I was on. It's the road trip where I learned about the gnarly, water-sucking red-tip photanias and how bad they are for our foundations. And I'll talk about this from time to time on various shows. Find those people that are where you want to be, right? That's the whole idea behind Lifestyles Unlimited. And you and Jennifer are exemplary for me as somebody that I'm always trying to catch up to. Now, at this point, I don't think I have a chance. Tell us a little bit about it, your background, how you got where you are now, and that'll maybe set the stage.
Well, I have to be honest, the whole idea of being a property owner never entered my mind until it was almost 27 years ago that my wife and I wanted to move into a different house, and we couldn't do it because we couldn't sell the other one, and our agent at the time said, well, now hear me out. I know you don't want to be a landlord, but let me rent it and you'll make money. And we begrudgingly allowed her to do that. She had it rented in, I believe, 24 hours. And after about 6 months of that, where we're looking at an income, all of a sudden, and this was a long time ago, of about $400 to $500 a month, my wife and I were like, wow, this is kind of interesting. And we were able to buy the house that we live in to this day. And so we went out and bought 5 more single-family, a couple of duplexes, but we ended up with 6 units. And both of us still had professional jobs, and we made very good livings. And in 2009, the company that my wife worked for decided to lay her off, and that was kind of scary. But we figured it out. We got through it. And then in 2011, my company laid me off, and that becomes sheer abject terror when you just lost two really good high-paying incomes and you have bills like everybody else. And it was right about that time that we actually discovered Lifestyles. And we were trying to decide what to do with our lives. I was 42 years old. My wife was a year younger. And we decided, we really didn't want to go back to the grind. We needed to find something else. And we said, well, we've been doing single family for a long time, and it works really well, and it pays us really well. So maybe we ought to expand that. And that's what we did with Lifestyles. And we thought, well, we feel like we know what we're doing, but we can always learn more. And so we came to the 2-day. And what was amazing to me is that what we then realized is we'd done a lot of things right, but there were so many things that we didn't know that even in that first year when we started buying more single families, which we got all the way up to 18, we continued to improve the model to where at 18 we were fully retired with a substantial enough income that we never had to worry about going back to corporate ever again. And I always tell people, single family may not be as sexy as it sounds to own 240 apartments, but it pays really well.
It does, doesn't it? And what a relief that you had that small at the time portfolio to support you and get through those times. And I think a lot of people are dealing with that right now, right, with the pandemic and everything else that we've been seeing with the economy and just even having a handful, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or like you, 6 units to throw off that cash every month. It is a big relief.
Yep, and when we went back and audited after the first few years, we had no idea how much money we'd actually made off of those 6. It was pretty extraordinary when you started looking at the 5 different ways that we capture income and revenue from our properties with the Lifestyles model. I would have guessed that it was less than a fourth of what we actually ended up bringing in.
Yeah. So for the most investors out there that are not part of the Lifestyles organization, they're typically focused on maybe cash flow. They might even be just cash buyers, right? Which we know is not the most optimal way to leverage your cash. But when you do follow, you mentioned the Lifestyles model, buying, a beat down property, fixing it up, you're capturing equity, you're creating that cash flow, you're putting a mortgage on it. And yes, we do leverage the properties, but then we also have that mortgage pay down every month because we have great residents, paying us on a consistent basis because we've put a great product on the market. So we've got the equity build up through the pay down. And what have we seen over the last decade? A ton of appreciation. It's crazy here.
Absolutely.
So you started with single family. When did you make the switch into multifamily? We're just got about 30 seconds, so we may start the conversation and pick it up on the back end here.
Well, it's pretty easy. We happened to jump into it in 2016, and we bought our first one. And then about 2 years later, we bought our second, and right at a year ago, we bought our third. And we kind of like the smaller, the boutique multifamily properties, but it's always nice to go into that. Our first one was 96 units, and it gave us a chance to learn and make some of the modifications and adjustments to our business model through the guidance of our mentors at Lifestyles to help make sure that any gaps that we had in our business could be filled.
96 units is a small multifamily, huh?
I think it's a small one.
Okay, well, you're talking to a single family guy. That's well beyond me. Like I said, I'm trying to catch up to you maybe one of these days. But okay, 96 units, and then you picked up how long in between deals?
2 years.
Okay.
And the one thing that I'll say about the transition is that if you run your single families like a small multifamily, the transition is actually really kind of a yawn. The biggest change for us was actually taking on full-time employees and trying to learn how to deal with that aspect of the business. But because we had run our single families like it was an 18-unit multifamily, all of the software was already in place, everything else that we had built over the course of those years to make sure we were ready to make that transition. And it felt totally natural to us. As a matter of fact, we kind of still look at each other and go, why didn't we do that years earlier?
Yeah. I get that. When you were running your single family portfolio as essentially as multifamily, were you concentrated in one area, or were you spread all over DFW? How were you buying? What did that portfolio look like?
It was, I want to say at the time we were in seven different municipalities in North Texas, and it really wasn't that big of an issue because once you start getting the scale, it was easier to own 18 than it was to own 6 because you get that economy of scale and you start using your supplier partners more frequently, and so you become a regular source of income for them, the people who are doing repairs and fixing, and so it gets easier to get those resources out at a reasonable price. So I know it sounds counterintuitive, but it really was easier owning 18 than it was owning 6, even though they were spread all across from Fort Worth all the way out to Garland.
Yeah, I'll second that. And on the earlier show today, I mean, I brought up the topic of your contractors. A lot of people will go for the bottom dollar vendor all the time, and they'll just constantly jump from vendor to vendor. You never build a good relationship that way.
Yep.
And I can tell you, our plumber that we go to all the time, they were more than happy to get out to the plumbing break that we had down the road here in record time, because we send that business to them all the time. So it's good to nurture those relationships. And then, of course, now you're in multifamily. Like you said, you've got staff to help you, to support you. So we are going to head into a break now. I hear the music. And when we come back, I want to kind of circle back to what we started our conversation or the show with, which was the issues going on in the market, how you're handling that through your staff, how you personally have jumped in. Maybe give us a little bit of background there. And then we'll shift gears and talk about the importance of getting involved at a broader level. So stay tuned.
We're back with the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. We're here to answer your questions and help you become financially free.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Andy Webb, and I'm joined today by Matthew, a single-family and multifamily investor from here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We talked a little bit, Matthew, about your background in the prior segment. And for the listener, if you missed any part of this show or any of our other shows that you want to catch, go to lifestylesunlimited.com, go to the radio tab, click on the podcast. You will find these archived there. You can also find us on YouTube and on Facebook. But we talked a little bit there about your background. In the segment before that, when we finally got you on air with us, we were touching base a little bit on the recent weather event. I want to go back to that, and I want to kind of tie that into your experience as a single family and then multifamily investor, and how you have attacked some of the problems. Tell us a little bit about what you've seen just in the past couple of days and how you've been able to address, the pipe breaks, whatever you've been seeing at your properties.
There are certainly things that you can't predict, and this, I think, would be one of them. But I know one of the most important lessons that we learn over time as investors is that you fix everything right the first time. And so, like with our single-family residents, we did have a couple of pipe breaks, but for the most part, we've had, I think, out of all of those single-family homes, we've had 4 service calls in the last, half a year. So it's not like we're getting a call every other day saying, I've got this problem. And the residents, when everything is working well, even when something goes wrong, they're incredibly gracious. I know the 2 single families that we had to work on, I couldn't believe how appreciative they were and how understanding they were of how long it took for us to get to them. And I actually repaired both of those myself yesterday. And it's not something that you have to do. You can be completely hands-off or you can be completely hands-on. I happen to really enjoy doing that work and being out there with the residents. But you don't have to. It's a personal decision how aggressively you want to be involved. And over time, the natural progression, I find myself doing less and less. Normally, I would not have done these calls, even though I know how to, if we hadn't had so many other issues going on that I had my suppliers working on. I wanted to take some of that load off of them as well. And then the other interesting thing I can tell you that I thought of on the break is we had talked a couple of days ago about what are you doing to try to special actions that you're taking to regards to COVID and everything else. Obviously, people are losing their jobs, better in Texas than most places. But when we reached out to residents that were having trouble paying, if they said they didn't have a job, we were actually hiring them to do work on our properties that they could do. And they might do it for a couple of weeks until they found something. But it was a great way for us to give back to them because most of them had been there for a while, and they were just hitting a hard time, and we had work for them. So that was one of the things that we decided early on when things started getting really bad last year that we could do to help our residents.
That's a classic win-win right there. I like to hear that. And I know I've talked with a couple of other lead investors within the Lifestyles Unlimited sphere that have also reached out to residents where they, maybe there's an electrician there and use them. It works out for everybody. That's great to hear. And then I do want to comment. So you're very hands-on, or you have been. You're slowly backing away. I want to address the spectrum there because we've got a lot of listeners that maybe are not members at Lifestyles Unlimited that are very hands-on and, hey, I don't need a network like that. I don't need those relationships. And that's okay. You could be as hands-on as you want to be. I think we heard from you earlier in the prior segment, though, even as a guy that's very hands-on as you have been, coming to a place like Lifestyles helps you even better optimize your portfolio and move it even further along. So there's certain benefits to being in a network like that, but you don't have to be hands-on at all. I want to stress that. We have a lot of members that get into any number of single-family houses and are fully hands-off. They hand that over to a property manager. I'm somewhere in between. I'm not quite like you.
And we have members, friends of mine that do it, that have houses all around Texas that don't live in Texas. And they don't, so they're certainly not hands-on other than maybe talking to their property management company from time to time when they get their reports to see what's going on. So it runs the entire full spectrum, and it really just depends on where you're at and what you want to do as an investor and what you want to do with your time day to day. Like I said, I actually really love going out and working on stuff. But, the longer I do it, the less I'm interested in it, and I move on to other things. And as the business grows, the business pulls me in different directions that my time is better spent.
Absolutely. And, the tagline at the end of the show, it's not the money, it's the lifestyle. Well, how do you want to build that lifestyle? A lot comes down to that. If it's a lot of travel, then doing it the Matthew way may not be the best way because you can't be on site and travel at the same time. Well, now's the time to hand that off to a property manager, or maybe, great market right now, collect those proceeds and move the whole portfolio into passive multifamily, right? Another great option. Now, you've made the transition from single family to multifamily, and I mentioned the IRO award. You've my wife and I actually, I have to thank you and for this really. We've been members of the Apartment Association of Greater Dallas since, I think, 2015. I had to go back and check my records, and I want to say it was your, presidency. I don't know what the title is there. You were firmly entrenched in the organization as part of the independent rental owner tranche of the AAGD, and that's really what helped us pull into that organization as well. You've been very involved locally in a lot of different organizations, and I'd kind of like to explore that a little bit. I think we have a lot of landlords out there, a lot of owners that are kind of the lone wolf. And I guess part of my message today in speaking with you is the notion of maybe it's better to explore that network, that relationship. Can you talk a little bit about how being in those organizations, helping and working with those organizations has, in the long run, helped you?
So, sure. So I'm members of several, AAGD, the Texas Apartment Association, the National Apartment Association, and what you're referring to in Dallas, I was the chair of the Independent Rental Owner Committee for 2 years, and I'm currently the vice chair for the National Apartment Association's Independent Rental Owner Committee. But beyond that, I'm a city councilman. I'm the president for Child Protective Services for Denton County, and then you add on to that all of the different things that you do as a property owner. But what's interesting is it sounds like it'd just be too much. The reality is they all kind of play very well off of one another, to where if I need something with CPS, if we're trying to help a family find housing, guess what? I've got, dozens and dozens of people that I know at the Apartment Association that actually helped stand up a program to help people trying to transition and get their kids back all across North Texas. And the same thing is true of, city council. There are things that I can leverage from there to help the Apartment Association, or vice versa. Sometimes it's just education, whether you're going out and you're comfortable talking to your representatives, the state or the U.S. representatives and senators, and helping educate them on what's going on in the business. And it's kind of neat when you have 3 different hats that you can put on and say, okay, well, that's great. We talked about the business of the little town that I'm on city council in. Now let's talk about the Apartment Association and the devastating impact of a CDC declaration and why we think we need to change some of those policies. And they'll stop and listen to you. You have instant credibility being a part of what I call their kitchen cabinet, of the people that they go to when they need to have answers. And so in many ways, it actually makes you far more effective as a leader of your business, whether you're only single family or you're doing multifamily as a syndicator. Absolutely.
And I will tell you, for myself, being somebody that is beginning to invest as a passive investor in multifamily deals, it's great to know that one of our lead investors at Lifestyles is that active, right, and is able to tie these sundry pieces together to help his community or the broader community or the state even.
It's very rewarding.
Absolutely. Rewarding for you. And again, it inspires confidence in a guy like me who's putting some money on the line to go into that next syndication. I find we have a lot of really responsible, very charitable, giving, and inspirational leads like yourself at Lifestyles Unlimited that are very much ingrained and working in their community, and just inspires confidence for me as the guy that's kind of, making that move, pointing up some cash, and maybe a little nervous about getting into his first passive deal, right? So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to head into our final segment here in just a couple minutes. Stay tuned. You're listening to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Now, let's get back to your map to financial freedom.
Welcome back to the show. This is Andy Webb, and I've got a great guest with me today from here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Matthew. He's a longtime investor, single-family, transitioned to multifamily, still doing both, really. And again, if you missed the earlier segment, I remember meeting him a long time ago. My wife and I joined Lifestyles in 2012. And we're focused on the single family path, and we went to as many events as we could. And I remember one of the early ones we went to was a single family road trip, which is where we go out to maybe 1, 2, 3 houses that are in various states of repair. And I can remember doing a tour of this house, and there was Matthew and Jennifer. And I remember talking to you guys, and after that, running into you guys periodically here and there on the road trips or maybe at the networking events, always helpful, always a wealth of knowledge just based on your experience in both now single family and multifamily. And I want to tap into that experience now because I know we have a lot of listeners that are maybe just new to single family investing or multifamily. Maybe they've started, maybe they're not quite started, maybe they're on the fence, right? Still nervous, not sure what to do. And I want to see what kind of tips or tricks or recommendations you might have for those that are just getting going. And focus on single family first. What kind of advice would you have for that newbie?
I will say that probably the most important, and this would be true honestly of both single family and multifamily, is surround yourself with other successful investors. You're going to want brains to pick, the kitchen cabinet like we just talked about, and we may choose to become part of other people's kitchen cabinet, but as we become involved with them, they become a part of our ecosystem that we get to leverage when we have questions. I can tell you to this day, I still call other investors, other lead investors, both on single and multifamily, because things come up that I haven't seen before, even in 27 years. But the other part of the giving back story is that you want to make sure that you're available to help those other people. And I think that's one of the best parts about Lifestyles is that everybody that I've ever met there is willing to openly give of their knowledge and their advice. And that allows you to avoid a lot of mistakes along the way. It's not complicated. Investing in single family is not complicated. Investing in multifamily is not complicated if you've surrounded yourself with other successful investors that are willing to help you. And that's what I've would say is the most valuable component of being a member of Lifestyles now since 2011.
So 10 years now. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier in the show, which is having that network. Don't do this on your own. You don't have to be a solopreneur or whatever they're called these days out there, lone dog, lone wolf, but get involved. We say it here too, don't learn from failure, don't learn by doing, but learn from other people's success. And that's exactly what you're talking about. Single family, any particular recommendations for the multifamily investors that are or planning to become multifamily investors out there?
Well, the same would apply there, but the other one that I think is so important, and we just barely touched on this, was when you build your ecosystem of your suppliers, treat them right. Build those relationships. You might save a few dollars switching around and bidding everybody out, but if you find somebody and they're good and you trust them, you hold them close, you want them to make money just like you want to make money as an investor. You want your suppliers to be successful, and that comes from, treating them well. And the great thing about that is when something does go wrong, you can count on them being there probably faster than they're going to go to other disasters like out here with all of the busted pipes and things. As soon as our pipes were cleared, we had 3 crews on site working as soon as those pipes were unfrozen so that we could get all of our folks back up and running probably quite a bit faster than other people were able to that have abused some of those relationships. And I think that becomes infinitely more important in multifamily because while you may have a staff, your staff can't do everything.
Yeah. It's not take, right? We gave a great example of a win-win situation earlier, and that's what you have to look for as you progress through this and build a team. It's not a team if you're just constantly taking and not giving and not working together. So Absolutely great advice. And I think a lot of people are going to realize that right now as they're struggling and scratching around to find that contractor that maybe is not returning their call.
I just talked to somebody that has not necessarily followed that advice, that was calling, asking if what they could do, because they said it'll be at the earliest Friday of this week before they can get a plumber out to their community. And that means they've got dozens of people without water. And unfortunately, because they didn't follow that win-win, that's the situation they've created for themselves.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but a lot of people are going to be struggling through the next couple of weeks, I think, with that. Let's talk a little bit more. You use the term ecosystem a moment ago. I like to use that when talking about Lifestyles Unlimited and the experiences that I've had there. Can you talk a little bit how Lifestyles has helped you progress? We heard about your progression from single family to multifamily. How have you leveraged Lifestyles to help you maybe speed up that trajectory? How have they helped you?
It's partially the supplier network that exists through the group. That certainly is something we've leveraged, and not an insignificant number of our suppliers or vendors have come through Lifestyles Unlimited. There's people dating all the way back to when we joined that believed in us, and they agreed to work with us even though we were 6 single-family homes. And the payoff is now for them that they, I think of one just in insurance alone, that we send them incredible amounts of money every year to insure all of our properties. That's part of the ecosystem, but the other huge part is just simply the membership. And like I said, people that are willing to share not only their successes, but the mistakes that they made, in the hopes that those of us, as we grow, won't make the same mistakes. And then as time goes along, as you learn more and more, you become more of that person that tries to help the newer owners, whether it's new to single family or new to multifamily, avoid those mistakes. It certainly is an environment where I've never felt like I'm competing with the other members for opportunities. I've always felt like everybody could get out there and find opportunities that would help them grow their business, whether they're going to stay in single family or make a transition from single family to multifamily, or as some people do, simply jump right in with multifamily.
Yeah, you've got the abundance mentality. You recognize that the pie can be grown. It's not a scarcity mentality. It's lose, win-lose rather. Like we said already a couple times, win-win, and that pie can get bigger. That's good stuff. You have a lot of experience. Have you leveraged the mentors on the multifamily side at Lifestyles quite a bit?
Absolutely. I did. I certainly did far more back in 2016 when we were transitioning. I know our particular mentor back then, I think at one point he stopped taking my calls because I was burning up his phone so much. And part of that was, I'll really give credit to the mentors there, is that part of that was him kind of pushing me off the ledge to force me to kind of work through things. But I always felt like he was there in case I did fall, to help pick me up and say, okay, what did you learn from that? And that transitioned over time to where it was less and less because we set up our business model with the multifamily. But absolutely, I think they would probably say that I abused them more than used them early on, and they certainly helped us make that transition. Honestly, if I had not had that there, I'm not sure we would have ever done it, because that was a nice warm blanket at night to get us through that initial anxiety and fear of potentially making a mistake. I felt like I had a huge team behind me that was keeping an eye out to make sure that we didn't.
Absolutely. That's good to hear. Yeah, I mean, again, you had tremendous experience already, but the mentors are there. They have experience as well, maybe a different experience level, different perspective, whatever it may be. They're there for you to use. They're part of your team. And I want to mention a couple things here. You mentioned the vendors. We have what we call a vendor hub at Lifestyles Unlimited, which is where I also go to get those first level, contacts. If I don't know who to use in a particular industry, maybe I need fencing or something else that I haven't encountered before, I'll talk with the vendors. They're out there on our Lifestyles Unlimited portal for us to use. And to have access to those vendors, I just want to throw a website out there. If you'll check out our Financial Freedom Program. Matthew, you also mentioned going to the 2-day when you first joined Lifestyles Unlimited. We're still doing that. We're doing it online, which is very convenient with those colder temperatures we had. Never mind that it's going to be 70 soon, but you can go to financialfreedomlivestream.com to learn more about that Financial Freedom Program, that 2-day that Matthew mentioned, the vendor hub, the vendor network. That's all part of that program. The education's tremendous. That's typically for most folks that are exploring this idea, a good place to start. There's a promo code I want to give you if you want to join and get into that 2-day seminar. It's Save Big. It gives you a massive discount. Again, that's financialfreedomlivestream.com. Save Big.
I can honestly say that just going to that Financial Freedom, that first that first step changed the entire trajectory of Jennifer and I's life.
I was going to ask you for final parting words. That sounds like a good one. Any last shout out before we end the show?
No, just encourage people to take charge of it. Stop letting other people run your life and decide how you're going to live. Get off that grind wheel. There's plenty of opportunities out there. And again, surround yourself with other successful investors, and you are likely to be very successful as well.
Agreed. And to that end, again, go check out the site, financialfreedomlivestream.com. Matthew, thank you so much for joining me. I know it's been a stressful couple days for you, for everyone out there. I appreciate the advice and recommendations. You've been listening to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Remember, it's not the money, it's the lifestyle. You have a good afternoon.
The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.